I'm Tammy Hanlon. I'm the city manager. And now I'd like to invite you to stand as the Air Force JROTC Color Guard from Tucker High School presents the colors and leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All in. Full. March. Conduct. Halt. Right. Haste. Post.
Ladies and gentlemen, may you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
Freeze it. Arms.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Left. Haste. Forward. March.
Thank you, and you may be seated.
Before I introduce our keynote speaker, Mayor Auman, I'd like to acknowledge two groups in attendance. First, I'd like our wonderful city staff to stand to be recognized. They go above and beyond to serve the residents of Tucker every day. So if you're a member of the Tucker City staff, please stand. Thank you to all of you for everything you do. And the second group is our incredible group of volunteers. We are so blessed here in Tucker to have volunteers who give up their heart and soul every day of the week. And so I'd like to acknowledge anybody who serves on one of our boards or commissions. So if you're on one of the following, please stand. If you're on our Community Council, Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Construction Board of Appeals, or Downtown Development Authority. Thank you to the volunteers. So without further ado, I want to introduce our keynote speaker. He's a father, a husband, and soon to be grandpa, I understand. This is exciting news. And I have to say, a fabulous leader. So please help me welcome Mr. Frank Auman, the mayor, the one and only mayor.
Good afternoon, and thanks to everyone for being here. It's a great afternoon. It's summertime, and we're glad for it. I just said 3 weeks ago I was wondering if it was ever going to not be dreary again, so nice to get outdoors. In addition to the folks that Tammy recognized, I want to introduce some other special guests or members of our council who are here. I see Noel Monfredini in the back. I saw Ann Lerner come in. Matt Robbins. Sorry, I lost track of where everybody is. Thank you. And there's one more, Bill Rosenfeld. There he is right here. Thank you all. It's a terrific group of council members to work with, and a pleasure to serve with them. So I tell you, you can all be proud of your representation. We also have with us Commissioner Steve Bradshaw. Where'd Steve go? Am I looking right at him? County Commission. We have a court, which I'll actually mention in my remarks in a little while. The court solicitor there who helps us with what we call our e-court is a Tucker resident, Josie Stevens, who is back here in the corner. Bill Floyd is here. He's the director of the DeKalb Municipal Association. The DMA is a group of the mayors and the cities in DeKalb County that have learned to work together and get some things done. So we're happy to have you here. And I saw Letitia Deere Jackson, who's a candidate for Superior Court. In addition to that, I want to thank Matt Holmes and Sonia Shubsky. I see, well, Matt's there behind the camera, thank you. Who not only organized today's event, but have organized and had a big week of organizing a whole bunch of events for what we've called Tucker Week, which is kind of a new thing as we expand and bring more focus on the different aspects of Tucker. So thanks to you all for your work all week long. Great job, and we appreciate what you do. And I have to introduce my family too. I have 2 out of 3 daughters. My youngest, Grace, who is hot off the heels of her first year at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. My oldest, Anna Morris, and her husband, John David, are here, also from Athens. And always last but never least, my wife is here, and happy for her support. Thank you. I don't know if the microphone's picking me up well, but I'll try to say it so you can hear it. Yeah? He's good. So the state of the city is kind of an odd turn of phrase. I don't know if it strikes you all the way that it strikes me. We have the state of the city, we have the state of the state, we have the state of the county, and of course it all derives from the State of the Union. And if you have heard me speak at all, you know I like to talk about history and kind of put us in the flow of history. So if you'll bear with me a minute, I want to give you just a bit. So the phrase, the State of the Union, comes right out of the Constitution. It says in Article 2, Section 3, Clause 1, that the President, quote, shall from time to time give to the Congress information on the State of the Union and recommend to their consideration such measures as he shall judge necessary and expedient. So he was kind of a CEO, and the Congress was saying, we're your board, we want you to come report to us from time to time how things are going out there. And so it was his duty to report back how things were progressing. And so George Washington decided that from time to time, once a year was probably enough of that. And so he started going over to the Congress, and he would give his reports annually. And the second president, John Adams, did the same thing. And then kind of an odd thing happened. Thomas Jefferson got elected president, and he literally started mailing it in. He didn't show up. He wrote up his State of the Union. He sent it over, and they said, here you go, partly to say, you know what? I'm not second to you guys. Our executive branch of government is on at least an equal footing with you guys in the Congress. And so it went like that for over 100 years. Woodrow Wilson was the first to then reinstate appearances before the Congress. And the address itself then became known as the State of the Union. It was largely to leverage new forms of media, right? At that time, the idea of widespread delivery of newspapers was a pretty big deal, and part of the reason he did what he did was he wanted to leverage that that kind of media. And so that turned into radio, and that turned into TV, and heaven help us, it's now turned into the internet. So, but as states and cities and counties continue to be formed around the country, a lot of them decided an annual report like this and like that was a good idea. We did too. And that's why we're here. So I take it as a personal favor, a sign of your support that you're here, because I know you could just as well watch this today or tomorrow or 100 years from now on YouTube. So I think it's especially important to understand our place in history if we're to understand the state of our city, which is what we're here to talk about today. I can tell you about our revenues, I can tell you about how many parks we have and the cost of housing, the condition of the roads, the number and types of crimes that have been committed, and I will, but none of that's really meaningful, is it? Without some perspective, without a comparison against our goals and our aspirations, the promises that we made. And so our current state, the state of the city, doesn't really mean much without a reference point. So I'm going to ask you to hold that thought for a moment and come back to it in a bit. As for history and the way things develop, there are moments in time that determine the future. And there are moments of time along the spectrum that form a path to the future. I'm not talking about the big moments at the end when you win a championship, get a job, get a promotion, make some big sale. I mean the moments where a determination is made about the future and the less heralded steps that follow along the way to fulfilling it. I call them the already but not yet moments. The moments when it's been decided, and now it only remains to make it happen. For example, ask the transportation engineer who's in the middle of a career making life easier for people, sometimes in small ways, sometimes imperceptible, sometimes in ways that save lives and injuries and misery. She'll tell you that there was a moment when she was 9 or 13 or 17, and she realized not only was she good at math and science, but she actually liked it. She had a teacher who encouraged her that he saw potential in her and that, yeah, of course it was okay for a girl to like math and science and engineering. She envisioned her life working in practical ways to use her passion to help people. She went to college, maybe graduate school, passed her professional exams, then she began doing things that had a big impact. Ask the businessman who's owned and operated his manufacturing company for 20 or 30 or 50 years. He'll tell you, way before he earned his first dollar, paid his first employee, he had a moment where he said to himself, you know what, I think I can do this better or faster or cheaper or in a new way that'll be better. And the die was cast. The future was determined, but not yet fulfilled. It was a long time before he got the financing together, got a facility, worked out his methods and product offerings, and then he was ready to get started. Ask the high school principal, who daily does what seems to me an impossible job. Raising academic performance, inspiring hundreds of young people that they can achieve, that they can realize the life and the lifestyle that they're dreaming of. He manages the logistics of a huge, ridiculous organization. And he'll tell you that when he was in high school, he realized he wanted to be a good student because one day he wanted to teach, maybe even lead teachers. And he began preparing himself a long time before he got his first shot at being a principal. It started way before he earned his PhD or set foot in a classroom as a teacher. Your city, our city has had such moments. In fact, without much notice, we had one last Tuesday. And it helps to define the current state of our city. Sometime a little over 5 years ago, someone around here got the idea that we should become a city instead of just a place. It wasn't me. There was probably more than one. I know at least a couple of them are in the room today. That idea, that determination set the course of our future, but it would be a while before it could be fulfilled. It led to a long effort to become a city, which led to a successful vote, which led to the last 2 years and 60 days. Last Tuesday was something like the day we graduated with our prerequisites. Inspired and set in motion by a vision from years ago, building on a series of important moments, and now ready to fulfill what was determined way back then. I want to digress for one more moment, and I'm going to bring it all together for you. Governments of the people are formed by the people for their own purposes, and every level of government in our country has one most basic document that spells out that purpose and defines it. It spells out the laws under which it will operate and the obligations to the people it governs and the boundaries it can't cross. The United States has its Constitution, our most basic document. The state of Georgia likewise has a Constitution. The city of Tucker has a charter. It says a lot of things, but among them this, in Article 6, Section 3, Paragraph B, a period of time will be needed for an orderly transition of various government functions from DeKalb County to the city of Tucker. Accordingly, there shall be a 2-year transition period as required by law, beginning at 12:01 a.m. on the first day of the second month immediately following the 2016 presidential preference primary. It goes on to describe some things that have to happen during that period, and it ends with paragraph G, which says, effective upon the termination of the transition period, the city of Tucker shall be a full functioning municipal corporation and subject to all general laws of this state. Are you following me? The presidential preference primary was held March 1st, 2016. The city of Tucker had its elections that same day. The first day of the second month immediately following the 2016 presidential preference primary was May 1st, 2016. And 2 years from then was May 1st, 2018, 10 days ago, last Tuesday. That was the day we became a full functioning city, and all the rest was prelude. And so to understand the state of the city today, we have to recall and re-examine and reaffirm the promises, the purposes and the aspirations we began with. As we advocated for cityhood, and when I say we, I mean a big group of some terrifically dedicated volunteers. We said we believed there were certain things we could do better for ourselves than a bigger, farther removed government could do for us. We wanted to do for ourselves the things we could do better right here in Tucker, and to continue a positive long-term relationship with DeKalb County on the things we thought we could do better together. We believed what Americans have believed from the beginning, that the government that governs best, the most effective government, is that which is closest to the people, which engages the people in their own communities to the greatest extent possible. We thought the result would be an improved and a sustainably improved quality of life for the people of Tucker. And so we settled on 3 specific services that we would provide for ourselves, and agreed that for at least the time being, we'd be better served to have the county continue providing other services it had historically done, but under some new operating parameters. As you've probably heard many times, those 3 services are zoning and planning, code enforcement, and parks and recreation. Other services like water and sewage, stormwater, police and fire services, sanitation, and a range of others would still be provided by the county, but now under a contract called an intergovernmental agreement, or an IGA. Our intention, our aspiration, was and remains that such a structure would raise the level of all those services for the people of Tucker, both the ones we would provide directly and the ones that would be provided under these contracts. But before we could even begin on those, we had a lot of groundwork to lay. Some of you remember that I answered a question a long time ago about what I would do on my first day as mayor, and I said, I'm going to open a bank account. And we did that. And we found a place to meet, and we hired a city attorney, and we appointed a city clerk. We did all the things, the most basic things that had to be done so that we could begin operating as a city. One of the things we did really well was to choose a company that would provide the management of daily operations of the city. Many of the people who stood up here earlier are the first hires we made in those positions. Many of them live right here in Tucker. A few have moved on, and we've made even better decisions as we've matured, but I can't tell you how pleased we are with their work and their work ethic and the results they've produced for the city of Tucker. So I know we said thank you to them earlier, but thanks to you. Excuse me 1 second. So about 3 months in to our days of cityhood, we took over responsibility for two of three of our core services: code enforcement and planning and zoning. It's pretty simple to assume responsibility. It's a lot more challenging to execute on. Is that a fair understatement, Council? With guidance and leadership from staff like Tammy, professionals like John McHenry, where's he gone? Courtney, back here. Our city attorney, Brian Anderson, our land use attorney, Brandon Bowen. We learned on the job. And it was very much like that old cliche about drinking from a fire hose. It was a load and a hard time balancing all that needed to go along. We made some significant decisions to approve and to deny certain wide range of rezoning applications. We made a bunch of people happy. We made a bunch of people mad. Some of those people were in both categories at different times, depending on what the subject was. We even gotten sued once or twice by the side that didn't get their way. But for the first time ever, we made those decisions here for ourselves. And that was really the point. We can live with not getting along with each other when there's an important issue that comes up. But the fact that we're doing it here is really the point that goes back to why we're doing all of this. Our code enforcement, Maricela and James, I saw them around earlier, have done a brilliant job. They diligently perform their duties. They balance gentleness with firmness on behalf of our citizens who work hard to do the right thing, keep up their properties and their businesses, play by the rules. And oh yeah, in order to do that, we had to establish a court. Thank you, Josie. Judge Nicholas, who's not here today. A court so that we could enforce and adjudicate those cases over code enforcement. Later in the year, as we were delivering those services, we began negotiating the first of the IGAs for other services. These were generally the simpler ones like fire and water and sanitation, where there wasn't a lot of negotiation or change required. We also began to a project to fundamentally define our vision for the next 5 or 10 years for the city of Tucker, called the Comprehensive Plan. It was a huge undertaking, vitally important. It was a citywide public input process that lasted for months. It was led by a consultant who specializes in the field, but along with a steering committee of 15 Tucker citizens who worked closely with that consultant to produce the final result. And the end result is a comprehensive summary of our aspirations for the future. It's all that in a binder about that big. It's not only aspirations, but there's a specific work plan in there for how we're going to get it done and get from where we are to where we aspire to be. We began it in the fall of 2016, finally passed the finished product a few weeks ago after 18 months of working and waiting on that document. To support our zoning and planning, we appointed several boards. You heard them mentioned earlier, boards and commissions. We have a community council, a planning commission, a zoning board of appeals, more recently the construction board of appeals, and they have specific responsibilities, but it goes back to the same point. They're all citizens of Tucker, charged with ensuring that our shared vision is carried out as our citizens have expressed it. Together they comprise 20 members of our community, all focused on furthering that vision. As we turned into 2017, all those groups began hearing cases and applications and appeals. In the spring, we undertook our first budget cycle, endured our first annual audit, issued our first round of business licenses, and did all the other things we were responsible for the first time. By the fall of 2017, we still had a few relatively simple IGAs to negotiate, covering things like 911 services, stormwater, and relationships with the CAB's courts. And we began the final push on the more difficult and more significant IGAs. We needed an IGA for parks, to transfer the parks. We needed an IGA for police services. And we had to work out what we would do about roads and drainage. On January 1st of this year, we executed an agreement to take responsibility for the Tucker Recreation Center. And if you haven't been over there to see the work that's been done, I really hope you'll take the time to drop by. With leadership from Rip, I know he's here somewhere, all the way in the back, and the department that he immediately started building, significant improvements were noticeable literally from the first day. We partnered with the YMCA to take over an after-school care program that was vitally important to a lot of local families. We partnered on Martin Luther King Day. We had over 100 volunteers turn out to paint and clean up the facility. 100 volunteers. Where else does that happen? yeah. Rip and his team ramped up security, began cleaning up the business aspects of the rec center, created a rental schedule for long and short and medium one-time users. The Master Gardeners received a grant to improve the path that runs along the butterfly garden and transformed its beauty. The Historic Society is closing in on its effort to raise money to preserve the Browning Courthouse, and rapid improvements continue every single day. The first of the remaining IGAs was to take on the rest of the park system, which should have been fairly straightforward, as most of that process is pretty clearly defined in the law, but there was at least one big hitch for us. 3 of our parks have dams, and we didn't know the condition of those dams. We didn't know whether they might represent a danger, and the last thing we wanted to do was take over a park and find out we had a life, health, safety issue related to those dams. So with the help of our legal team and significant effort on the part of our staff, again led by Tammy and Brian, several members of our council, and with the cooperation of the county leadership, we negotiated an innovative agreement that allows the county to continue to use those bodies of water as part of their stormwater management system in exchange for retaining the liability should it ever turn out those dams need some kind of attention or repair. Yeah. It's not a glamorous thing, but it's one smart cooperative solution that's going to benefit people at Tucker for a long time. So the result of that IGA that led to us assuming responsibility for the parks is we've been able to fully assess, or begin to fully assess, and make big improvements in our busiest parks. The rec center is cleaner and busier than ever. It's hosting Main Street Theater's production of The Curious Savage in 2 hours. We have rooms rented to everything from pottery class to dance and karate and political organizations, exercise classes and bridge and canasta for seniors. We're even hosting the training for the Georgia Barbecue Association this summer. And we're providing exciting summer camps for our community with much more to come. So You've probably also heard there's a lot of work being done at Cofer Park. Improvements and repairs to the swimming pool and the addition of a new splash pad for the kids. And if the early buzz on that is any indication, that is going to be one busy place this summer. There are a lot more exciting things taking place, like resurfacing the tennis courts and some huge improvements to the walking trails at Henderson Park. It's really important to point out two things here. First, we negotiated hard with the county. That was what was needed. But it was all done without threats or lawsuits between us and the county, and without pointing fingers at each other in the media. Sort of like Sherlock Holmes' dog who didn't bark, right? You think back on some of the other cities that have been formed and the acrimony that went along with that. It's been an important part in our development. And secondly, although the city is ultimately responsible for the parks, the hundreds of volunteers and the various Friends of the Parks groups around Tucker have been indispensable to these successes, and I want to be sure to acknowledge them as well. So at the same time, negotiations of the IGA for roads and drainage were taking place, and that was all in the context of the new SPLOST that had passed back in the fall. The vast majority of the SPLOST dollars are to be dedicated to roads and related projects, and we had to work out who would be responsible for what between the city and the county. Generally speaking, the answer to that is that the county will continue to be responsible for maintenance and repairs issues like potholes and patching, while the city will recognize and control more than $5 million a year in funds for capital projects like resurfacing, intersection upgrades, and safety projects. So it's an exciting time, and that's one of the IGAs that we had to work out before May the 1st. The biggest difference in how the county's service will be provided is between cityhood and this new paradigm versus the old, is that they'll provide them in cooperation with the city. We'll be able to track every reported issue, when and how long it takes to be addressed, and we'll begin to be able to assess all the costs involved. Our leadership will meet with their leadership every month to discuss the status of various projects, the efficiency of the workflow, responsiveness on behalf of our citizens. We've created a new position, sort of inelegantly called the citizen responder. Did I see Camille around here someplace? Way over here on the right. Camille is our citizen responder. She will be the conduit and the advocate for all those kinds of issues between Tucker and DeKalb County. You can sort of think of her as your help desk for anything you need regarding city and county services. And here's the really important point again. In negotiating that IGA, we didn't somehow get the county over a barrel or threaten or cajole them in some way. We worked cooperatively together to make it work for everyone willingly. And I just can't emphasize how important that is. And finally, also at the same time as the negotiation for parks and roads and drainage, we negotiated our first IGA for police services. What we produced is a unique agreement that will improve police services for Tucker by bringing the entire city into a single precinct, led by Major Greg Pedrick, who's been the major there for some time now, and the best police force anywhere, certainly in DeKalb County. Among other things, we have some fairly long horizons. Should we, or the county, ever want to do something different? That's so that the good officers who serve us are assured they won't face some situation where their jobs are eliminated on short notice. But it also allows both sides time for an orderly transition to another arrangement should that ever become necessary or desirable. It ensures certain minimum levels of staffing and manpower, and that those levels are determined on the basis of objective standards like crime levels and population density, and other factors recommended by Major Pedrick and other law enforcement professionals. We'll also continue our unique working relationship with our police liaison, an officer, and this has been in place since the beginning, the first days of cityhood, an officer who briefs the council and staff every 2 weeks on crime, trends, and enforcement and prevention measures which are underway. It's already proved its effectiveness over and over again. Lieutenant Shepner's here in the back, as he is at all of our meetings. Thank you for that. I have to tell you, as recently as yesterday afternoon, about this time maybe, the DeKalb police captured a much wanted suspect who had not only stolen cars from a dealership in Chamblee, been responsible for auto break-ins in the city of Tucker, shot a 6-year-old child in the course of his bandithood in South DeKalb County. Because of the good police work, because of this wide range that the DeKalb County Police Department can cover, they got that done. That guy's in jail, where I hope he stays for a very long time. We had those 3 big IGAs that we were under the gun for. Tammy's still trying to catch her breath. But that wasn't enough. At the same time all that was going on, we also completed our second budget cycle, which was really our first full big budget cycle, in that we are now and will realize all of our revenues from all of our sources for the first time. We have a full year's history of expenses and operations to look back on and use for forecasting. And we have that $5 million plus in SPLOST money. So all those things were completed in April after several months of serious dedicated work. Included in that budget are the major follow-on studies to our comp plan. The comp plan is the highest level overarching plan aspirations for the city. Underneath that, we dive deeper into some individual subjects, including roads and connectivity and our transportation master plan. We'll take a systemic and systematic look at our parks and a parks master plan. We'll have a study specifically on trails to connect our parks and our schools and our public places that way. We'll have a couple of others on specific topics like the development of our downtown corridor and safety improvements on our local roads. Every one of these studies, like our comprehensive plan, will be led by professionals in the field in conjunction with working committees made up of our own citizens, which means another 50 to 75 people across those studies will be directly involved in the planning with extensive public input, producing a threefold benefit. Better information for us as we make decisions, more input and influence from the community at large, and my favorite, my personal favorite, it qualifies to get more of other people's money by making us eligible for grants and other contributions from state and federal and private sources. Also in the last few months, we created Tucker's first Downtown Development Authority, or DDA. This is an authority charged with helping to plan and promote development in Tucker, and is one of our most powerful tools for doing so. Again, it's comprised of 7 people, all of whom have a significant interest in seeing Tucker prosper in a way that's compatible with the vision expressed by the community. There's more, there's much more, but as you can see, it's not particularly glamorous. Much of it's only now becoming tangible and visible. So you may be saying, so what? What's the point of all this, and when do I see some results? Well, remember how I said I could recite all kinds of achievements and accomplishments and statistics? I hope you get the idea that it's a pretty impressive body of work that our staff and council and volunteers have accomplished. Sometimes I wonder if we're pushing too hard. But we didn't do all those things just for the sake of doing them, and we didn't do them because we were looking for something to do. We did those things to lay the groundwork in order to achieve our objectives that I described earlier, bringing government closer to the citizens, engaging more people, and leading to a better quality of life. I'm not going to give you the entirety of my audio-visual aids. Where's Sonia? Hit the button. This is it. There it is. I want to relate all this activity that I've described to our goals a little more specifically to try to help you see how it all fits together. The comprehensive plan that I mentioned earlier boiled down all that research and public input on all aspects of the city to these 5 primary goals. Maybe you can't read them from where you are, but I'll go over them with you. Number 1 was to enhance downtown Tucker. The comp plan itself gave us a lot of tools for doing this, but we also completed a parking study. We worked closely with the Tucker North Lake CID on planning for downtown, particularly engaging property owners and other stakeholders about their plans and their vision for the property that they own downtown. In the new budget, we funded a study specifically to develop a framework for how to nurture desirable development downtown. And as I mentioned, we established a DDA just in the last few months. They've been working hard to get trained, get oriented, and begin to take on some projects. Second goal was to improve transportation connections. The passage of SPLOST has given us an unprecedented opportunity to plan our own transportation future. Thanks again to our professional staff's experience, we got ahead of our competition, who is other cities and counties, by completing an assessment of every road and street in Tucker well ahead of others, and getting our contracts out for bid ahead of them as well. Where's Ken? Is he here today? Ken's our city engineer who's worked tirelessly on that stuff. As a result, we've created priorities for addressing resurfacing and other needs, and the council committed to over $6 million in work over the next 12 months, beginning this fall, meaning pavement on the ground, end of summer, 1st of fall. We're also beginning the transportation master plan that I mentioned earlier, and the trails master plan, which together will drive our planning for connectivity. The third item up there is to preserve and improve our neighborhoods. We've heard dozens of rezoning applications, we the council, including some pretty contentious ones, to put it mildly. We've approved several significant ones, including modern apartments for working people and for senior independent living to replace worn out and rundown space on North Lake Parkway, as well as a number of new single-family developments in other parts of the city. We've turned down some where they were either not aligned with the city's vision or where the timing was not quite right. We've attempted to err on the side of caution before our comp plan was approved and where there was no clear consensus on whether the project fit our vision for a particular area. We have lots of time to create that kind of consensus and no reason to rush ahead with plans while we're still maturing in our thinking. Meanwhile, we've also conducted almost 500 land development inspections. Kind of a funny term. It's an indication of how many projects are and have been underway in the city, most of which didn't require any kind of rezoning or variance or coming before one of our boards and commissions. Fourth was to strengthen recreational and community resources. I've told you just the beginnings of the great work being done in our parks and rec department. After years of underspending, deferred maintenance, and in some cases outright neglect, we have made years worth of progress. I just can't, I can't tell you how excited I am about it. Years worth of progress just in these first few months. I have to mention, the county's held up its end. They've completed some legacy projects that were approved and at various stages along the way when Tucker became a city. And when they might have said, yeah, you know what, you're on your own now, they instead finished the project to resurface the tennis courts at Henderson Park. They're finishing the project to replace the kiddie pool with a splash pad that's creating all that buzz at Cofer Park, and they've finished other commitments on legacy projects elsewhere. As with every other aspect of our startup, our volunteers have been key, and our relationships of mutual respect and trust with the county have been essential and allowed us to do those kinds of things. Bolster our economic base is the fifth one there. We have continued to reach out and encourage businesses to stay and to locate in Tucker. Last year, I want you to hear this and think about it for a second. Last year, we issued over 300 new business licenses in the city of Tucker. 300. That's a big deal, yeah. We've added new businesses through relocation, which Emery loves to point out, includes some from Gwinnett into DeKalb, which hadn't happened for a very long time. There's been new investment, like the warehouse facility you might have seen on Greer over on the other side of Mountain Industrial, 78 on Mountain Industrial. And we've added them through voluntary annexations like Briarcliff Village. And the entirety of the Stone Mountain CID now, including Eagle Rock Studios and Graphics Packaging. These are people who said, we want to be a part of what you're doing in Tucker, and we're happy to have them. So all these goals are being pursued and carried out by the people of Tucker in powerful ways that leverage the spirit of community that existed long before we were a city. Where we used to have one member of the county's planning commission, we now have 5 of our own, just for Tucker. Where we used to have a few members on the county's community council, we now have 9 of our own. Where we used to hope DeKalb's development authority would look kindly upon Tucker, we now have our own, dedicated to Tucker's future. Where a builder or a property owner used to have to go to Decatur with his request for whatever it might be and have it decided by people from all over a county of 750,000 people, we now have our own office, staffed by people we know within 10 minutes of anywhere in the city. It's a big deal. So I hope you see by now all this activity has not been random. It's not been busy work. It's not been without a goal in mind. These 5 goals will continue to decide our decision making, and they'll grow and change over time with our city. Your elected leadership, the professional leadership we appoint, your neighbors who give themselves to these boards and commissions will always return to these and the then current goals of the city as the way to assess the state of the city. Finally, I want to summarize it for you one other way, the way that I usually describe it when I only have a few minutes. I envision Tucker as a place where you can live your whole life, the length of it and the breadth of it. By length, I mean at all ages and stages of life. By breadth, I mean the full spectrum required for a full, meaningful life. It's on your bulletin today. Thank you, somebody. Somebody did that for me. You've heard me talk about it as live, work, play, and pray. I want Tucker to be a place where a person can do all 4 of those things in their own community for as long as they choose to call Tucker home. but they won't happen on their own. We have to work hard and focus every day to ensure that we have a full range of housing options. We have to focus and work hard every day to ensure that we have opportunities for people to work in a range of occupations right here in Tucker. We have to focus and work hard every day to ensure that we have opportunities for play and recreation, shopping and dining, all the other things that go with having a good life outside of your work right here in Tucker. And as individuals, we have to always remember and be conscious to value and honor and nurture and participate with our faith community. They do the things government cannot do to help our neighbors, comfort the afflicted, lift up the downtrodden, and nurture the human spirit right here in Tucker. So that's my report on what we've done in our first 2 years and 60 days. The state of our city of Tucker, is well-founded, it's strong and vibrant. The state of our future is bright with the promise of achievements already determined, but not yet fulfilled. I hope you're as glad as I am that we're in it together. I look forward to spending tomorrow with you on Main Street.